What's up, everyone? Rose Brown, the accountant therapist here, and welcome to part one of my four-part series where I'm talking about why you owe taxes, right? So this past tax season, a lot of folks found themselves owing for the first time or for the first time in a long time, or they found themselves not receiving the amount of refund that they're used to, right? So there could be a lot of things that cause that to happen. But from my experience this past tax season, there are four main items that has caused folks to owe. And in each series, I'm going to break down each of them so that you can make the necessary adjustment as you move forward throughout this particular tax year, right? So the first part, which I'm breaking down, is the Form W-4. Now I'm going to talk about what it is, how it works, and why it may have caused you to owe or your refund to be reduced. So the Form W-4 is a form that employees complete and present it to the employers, or they fill it out maybe through the employer's payroll software. Now, once the employee completes this document, it tells the system how much should be withheld from these employees' wages based on the information that they put on the W-4. Now, the unique thing about the Form W-4 is the fact that they have a new version and an old version. The old version, a lot of us are familiar with, but the new version is what's causing folks to owe taxes or for their refunds to be reduced dramatically. Now, the old Form W-4, that asked for personal information such as your name, then it will ask you for your filing status, or are you doing single, head of household, and then it will ask you for an allowance. Now, when it asks you for an allowance, it's asking you to put a number from 0 to 9, right? So if you put 0, you're pretty much saying, hey, take as much taxes as possible from my wages. If you had put 9, you're saying, listen, don't even touch my money. So when folks were able to put this allowance, they're able to kind of manipulate how much taxes are taken out at a particular time. So for example, if you were supposed to be getting a bonus and maybe you don't want all that taxes to come out, you went into the system and you changed it to maybe 9, right? So I've seen that happen before. Now, that's the old W-4. The new W-4, which came out, I believe back in 2020, it asked a little bit of a different type. It asked different types of questions. So with that particular new Form W-4, it's asking, similar to the old one, your personal information, your name, and then your filing status. Now, when it asks you for your filing status, it then takes a step further and it asks you for your dependents. So this new Form W-4 no longer asks you for allowance. So you don't have to worry about what number you should put on it. When it asks you about your dependents, then you need to determine how old your dependents are. This way you can determine what the credit you would be eligible for when you file your tax return. So it will ask you, is your dependent under age 17 or are they 17 and older? So under 17 means that child would be eligible for the child tax credit, which is worth $2,000. If they're over 17, then they would be eligible for the other dependent credit, which is worth $500. So when you fill out the new Form W-4, you want to put how many eligible dependents you have fitted in these age bracket, and then put in the amount associated with it. So if you had 2 dependents under age 17, you would put $4,000. And I'll make sure to drop a link of the new Form W-4 in the description, as well as the old. This way you can kind of see the difference there, but make sure you're using the new Form W-4 with your employer. Now, the new Form W-4 also takes it a step further, where it asks you, do you have multiple jobs? So this here is going to be critical because a lot of folks, they do have multiple jobs. And if you don't tell a job about another job you may have, they don't know about each other, right? So pretty much the Form W-4 says, do you have multiple jobs? If you do have multiple jobs, then we will withhold accordingly. So that kind of makes things a little bit more challenging, I would say, when you're filling out the new Form W-4, because now you have to use the worksheets that come with it, right? But ultimately, if you have multiple jobs, you do need to tell each employer that you have another employer. This way they can withhold accordingly, because if you do not, what happens is when you file your tax return, let's say you have 3 jobs, all three of those jobs come together and they push you into another tax bracket, leaving you to owe taxes because they did not know that they need to withhold based on the fact that you had multiple jobs. Okay, so that's the two big items that you want to keep in mind with the Form W-4. So what that means for you and for folks who may have owed, if you owed, two things could have happened. You either incorrectly completed the Form W-4, the new one, or you have an outdated Form W-4 on file, which is the old one. Now, moving forward, you want to make sure that you update your Form W-4 with each and every job that you have, okay? And you also want to make sure that you're accounting for your dependents accordingly. And this means if, for example, you're giving birth, say this year, you want to make sure that you let your employers know that, hey, I'm going from single to head of household, plus I will have a dependent worth $2,000. Or maybe it's the flip. You were head of household, you were head of household, still head of household, but your child is now age 18, right? So you're no longer eligible for the child tax credit. It's now the other dependent credit. So the difference between $2,000 and $500, child tax credit, $2,000, other dependent credit, $500. Right, so you want to make sure that you're keeping it updated throughout the year if there are any changes. So if you went from single to married filing joint, or you went from head of household to single, maybe you're no longer claiming your dependents, right? So those things you want to absolutely keep in mind. So just to kind of recap what we talked about, with the old Form W-4, it's now outdated. Okay, you need to have a new Form W-4 on file. And one other thing that I would like to note that I didn't mention before, the new Form W-4 was created in a way to allow taxpayers to take more money home throughout the year rather than waiting to get a large refund at the end of the year. So what that means is folks who are used to getting a large refund, they'll see it kind of diminish in a sense, because now the IRS has put things in place where you're taking more throughout the year home. Now, it may not seem like a lot because it's smaller versus you getting a lump sum when you file your tax return. And the last thing that I would like to note there is the fact that if you were someone who owed, the new Form W-4 was designed to take out more throughout the year so that you don't have to worry about owing a lump sum when you file your tax return. So ultimately, the goal of the IRS is that you take home enough throughout the year. This way you don't owe too much when you file your tax return, or you don't get a large refund. Okay, and the goal for them also is that whatever is owed or due is not necessarily more than $1,000. Because after the $1,000 mark, that's when estimated tax payments become a requirement, or maybe you need to do additional withholding, right? So that concludes it for the Form W-4. So ultimately, when you walk away from this video, you want to make sure that your Form W-4 on file with your employer is absolutely up to date. And if your friends or family also complain that they owed, you definitely want to let them know to check this video out, as well as the rest of the series, and to just go ahead and update their Form W-4. Just make sure that they have an updated one on file with all their employers. Well, that's all for this video. I will see you guys next time. Thank you.